Welcome back to the Intelligent Builder podcast, sponsored by Plutus Agents. We help residential contractors eliminate manual chaos by connecting all their systems and tools so you stop wasting time on admin and lift margins without the extra hire. If that sounds useful, connect with me on LinkedIn and DM me the word growth for a free consultation. Today, I'm joined by Jason Blair, the owner of Astro Roofing in South Florida. Jason grew up in a family of roofers, learned the craft in the field, then added the business discipline at a national player before launching Astro. He's built a reputation-led, education-forward brand, and he's putting real dollars into community impact as well. Jason, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So, could you tell us a little bit about your story, kind of what clicked and told you were ready to launch your own business?
Well, I don't think I was ready to when I actually did it. I'd been in the industry for a long time. Obviously, I grew up in the industry. I was planning on starting my own business, and I was working at a small residential roofing with a small residential roofing contractor in West Palm Beach, and they basically were having financial issues right about the time that I was kind of looking to start my own business. And, they came to me, explained to me their financial issues, and it was just time to exit at that point for me. And I was lucky because, when I started, it kind of like turned into a rocket ship right away. 2016 was a good year to start roofing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were kind of forced into it into a way, but hey, it worked out, so that's great. You were telling me on our last call that the market you're in can kind of chew people up. So what are some early boundaries or policies that protected your integrity and cash flow from day one so you could build?
Well, from day one, I made a commitment not to be cheap, not to try to get caught in this race to the bottom mentality that a lot of roofing contractors have. It's a very competitive industry. And in my area, Palm Beach, Broward County, Florida, where we operate out of, there's 1,200 roofing contractors just in this area. And I mean, from my front door of my office, you can literally see two and three other roofing contractors. So it's very highly competitive. And so if you're not really concentrating on craftsmanship, training, building quality from the beginning, then you kind of get caught into that mentality, just trying to be cheap, just trying to win jobs. And just look, the easiest way to build quality is to just cheapen your price, right? I mean, if I can do it for free, who doesn't want to do that? Right? But unfortunately, the industry is built in such a way that when you're in that mentality of like trying to be cheap rather than competitive, there's a statistic, actually 96% of roofing contractors go out of business by year 5, so that kind of was burned into my brain, and I'd worked in the industry for so long, and I'd seen good roofing companies actually go out of business. So right from the beginning, I just, I didn't really concentrate on price. I concentrated more on training, building a really good team, and, putting out quality craftsmanship. And I think that's what's helped us.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going with that and when you were building, could you paint the picture of your first year? Like what was the team size, some first wins, any first oh shit moments you had?
Yeah, so the first year I was selling the work and doing the work, I didn't really have a team in place. I knew a lot of people in the industry, but I built off of my experience, I guess, and I didn't really do that for too long. But first I started building our service department. Really, we started out doing a lot of repairs, and I was fortunate enough to recruit a couple really good guys that I knew in the industry to come help me with that, to do like the work side of it. So I was basically answering the phone, setting the appointments, going and doing all the sales. And then once I sold the job, I would schedule it and, send out our service crew. But I was always really focused on growth, so within the first year, I think I had about a 3-person sales team, so we set out hard on marketing. We were buying a lot of leads, but we were doing a lot of marketing stuff to try to generate leads. It's a lot easier in 2016 than it is today, I can tell you that. But we were fortunate enough basically to have a lot of leads back then. And growth really was, you know, when you're starting at the ground level, growth is easy, right? So once you've grown, growth becomes even more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Once you're first starting out, everything is growth. And it's definitely a grind too. And it's really interesting you said that 96% failure rate too. It's just a bunch of like guy in a trucks, like you were saying last time. So what do you think are two or three maybe predictable patterns of failure that you see? And how do you coach your team to avoid those?
Well, again, when you're in that mentality of racing to the bottom to be cheap, you lack training, you lack proper supervision, you lack the proper team. And look, I'm really good. I'm the best. as far as like producing and selling, and I mean, I'm one of the best in the industry. I'll put me up against anybody. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying I can only do so much by myself. And when I hit right about the $1.5–2 million annual revenue mark, that was basically the limit of my abilities of being able to be like a small team. Once you get to like the $2 to $5 million range, you got to kind of start, having, I wouldn't say full divisions, but you got to kind of start separating into kind of divisions. And again, right now, we generate 10 to 15 million a year, but even that transition was very difficult because we had to transition into processes and even deeper training. And so again, if you're going to stay small, that's fine. But when you're small, roofing, you got to understand we're tearing off people's roofs in the middle of the storm seasons a lot of times, right? So if you're not really good at that, you can lead to a lot of liability. If your guys aren't trained properly and you're leaving back shoddy product, then that can lead to a lot of liability. And all those are trailing costs down the road. So if you're not set up for that on the front side, by selling your jobs properly and having cash flow and having a proper margin to work off of. If you don't have those things, then you can't implement the training. You can't implement the proper supervision, and you can't have the resources to fund warranties and things that pop up down the line. Like, look, roofing's a tough industry because roofers are tough, right? I mean, these guys are not. I mean, look, I'm a roofer, so I'm not going to down talk roofers, but these guys are not highly qualified professionals trained by, the tops in their field, things like that. I mean, these guys get trained by their cousin and their brother and their uncle. And, so if their brother, their cousin, their uncle isn't reading manufacturer guidelines, isn't versed on the proper way of doing things, then bad habits get perpetuated down the line. And that's kind of what we see. We hire a lot of guys that come into our company and to our team. But what we find out is that even though they say they know what they're doing, and even though they say they have proper training, they really don't. They really lack it. So even lifelong roofers that we are lucky enough to bring into our team, we have to typically retrain and have to send them out with our guys and spend time getting them to fit into our mold.
Yeah, the training there is really, really important. And you were saying there's kind of stages to the growth, which there's definitely stages, especially from now 1 to 2 and then now 10 to 15. So what about maybe a painful lesson that you kind of had to learn the hard way? And what did you change because of that?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's been times I can tell you where I was thinking, what did I do? It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, owning a roofing contract or owning a roofing company in South Florida is not for the faint of heart. I mean, you really have to have guts. You got to have some luck. You better have experience. You better be really good at business. But there's a few things that come to mind. First of all, don't do work without having anything signed. That's the number one thing. We get into this sometimes because we feel like we have a relationship or we know the person or we feel good about them. And I've done this in the past in my career where it's hasn't come back to bite me. But I'll tell you a quick story where I was renting a building from a guy. And so I was renting out half of the building. He had the other half where his office was. And I was getting ready to move out of the building. I was actually, I outgrew it. And I was getting, it was a small little office with a little tiny warehouse in the back, but we had outgrown it. So we were moving out. And before we were moving, he had asked me to look at the roof. So I looked at the roof and I'd come up with a plan to, do some things, form some maintenance, basically. It wasn't like a full-blown re-roof or roof replacement. But I had come up with a strategy to do a roof coating for him and do some roof maintenance to get him some more time. He owned the building, no insurance, stuff like that. So at the desk, I'd given him a proposal. I'd sent it to him through the email, and he's got his computer open as he's talking to me. I'd known the guy for a long time, not personally, but professionally. He's like, yeah, let's get it done. Let's do it. And so, we spent about 3 or 4 days out there while he's there. I mean, we're there. It's not like we're incognito. And I'd never checked to see if he'd signed the contract and sent it back. And this is a gray area. Technically, you don't really need to pull a permit for roof maintenance and stuff. But but you can, and sometimes it is required, and it really depends on the inspector or the plan review guy or the owner of the property, right? So this guy was in a position where we didn't need to pull a permit, and that's exactly what he told me. He goes, look, as long as I'm in this position, we do not need to pull a permit, so don't worry about that. Just get the work done. So I don't pull the permit. I go up there, I do the work, and technically we don't really need a permit. But so I go up there, I do the work. It's about $17,000 worth of work. When I go to get paid, he's like, "Hey, I never signed a contract." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I probably could have sued him. I could have made a big deal about it, but I walked away from it. I was like, you know what? That's fine, because I'll never do business with you again, and I'm gonna make sure I let everybody know what you did. I was so fresh in business. I didn't really have a lot of money at the time. I didn't really want to get litigious, and this guy's got money, man. This guy got money. He owns buildings. He's a big player in the city, stuff like that. So, I was like, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers or make any enemies, being new in business. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just chalk that one up to a learning experience. But stuff like that happens a lot in the industry. I've walked away literally from hundreds of thousands of dollars commissions. I mean, even how I started this company, that company I left, I literally had to walk away from, probably close to $100,000 in worth of commission. And it happens so often down here in Florida. That's another reason why guys go out of business. They get greedy. They screw over their employees. They don't pay guys. They don't pay their sales guys. Sales guys make a lot of money. Roofing sales guys make a lot of money. I mean, I got guys that make over $500,000 a year working for me. And if you can't make that payroll, they're not going to work for you. They're going to go down the line. They're going to work for somebody else. And then you're not going to have that revenue stream, right? So if you treat your guys right, them correctly, just try to do the right thing. Don't do what the customer wants. Don't do what everybody wants, but just do the right thing. One thing that I definitely learned was a hard lesson. This is a good one. Is don't try to just make everybody happy. I mean, because when you try to make everybody happy, is what you do is end up pissing people off. Really, the real trick to it is just by being matter of fact and doing the right thing. I've spent a tremendous amount of money going back and redoing work and making people happy, things like that. But there's also times where I've said, no, I'm not going to do that because that's not right. That's not correct, or things like that. So I don't try to just make people happy. I try to just do the right thing, whether they like it or not. That's how you do business, is by doing the right thing, not just capitulating.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two pretty tough lessons to learn, especially that first one, just having to kind of take it to the chin,
Yeah,
and just
take it
deal
on the
with
chin.
it. Yeah, yeah. But so you talk a lot about the kind of the best way to be the best roofer, and you position yourself as the expert roofer, and you make a lot of buyer education content too. So what about on the other side of things? What are maybe the top three things that homeowners get wrong when they're choosing a roofer?
Again, trying to go cheap, because that's I would say the number one thing would be trying to be cheap with it, because I get it. It's a big expense, but it's also a big investment, and you only get one chance to build that roof correctly. Right. And most of the important stuff that's being done, you're never going to see. It's all going to get hidden underneath shingles or tile or metal. And that's the stuff that you really need to have built properly from the beginning to make sure that you're going to get the actual life expectancy out of the product, because roofing, again, it's a very forgiving product. The manufacturers understand who's installing these products. There's not a lot of craftsmanship involved. It's very kind of user friendly, and because of that, you can get a certain amount of performance out of roofing products like shingles and metal and tile, things like that, and roof coatings. But you're not going to get the performance that it's supposed to have. And I see this a lot. A roofing company gets a good reputation while they're doing the job. They get a good review, things like that. But then 4 or 5 months down the road, or a year or two down the road, when the roof starts to leak and it starts to require excessive maintenance, the roofing company disappears. Now it's like there's nobody to give a bad review to because they're gone. And then you're stuck fixing the roof. So I'd say trying to find the least expensive roofer is not a great strategy. And we always say, look, I can't be cheap. I can be the best. And that includes, I can give you the best price, the best roof, the best warranty, right? So we try to give the best price for the best product. And again, anybody can be cheap. It's not hard to go in and just try to be the cheapest guy. Anybody can go in to a customer and say, hey, what was your lowest price? And I'll beat it. That's not a great strategy. That's what a lot of guys end up doing. And that's what will get not just the homeowner in trouble, but the roofing contractor as well. Homeowners don't really understand that. Another thing that I think homeowners definitely don't understand is the insurance. Proper insurance for a roofing contractor is and can be incredibly expensive, especially if you haven't been in business for a long time. A couple things that roofing contractors do to kind of cheat on their insurance is they use what's called a staff leasing agency, or they'll use a payroll company that basically um, it handles their workers' comp and their payroll, and it's all kind of wrapped up into one, and they pay their workers' comp on a weekly basis. It's a great way to start a business, and if you do it properly, it's okay. But the scheme in roofing is they get this insurance policy, and if your guys are not rostered and registered through that leasing agency, they are not going to be covered on the workers' comp policy. So if a roofer, like for me, for instance, I have my own workers' comp policy. There is no leasing agency. Our roofers are, when they get a paycheck, it says Aastro Roofing on it. It doesn't say some staff leasing agency company. But when that happens, it basically, I can put anybody on my job. I don't have to run any paperwork on him. I don't have to do anything. And if he gets hurt, he's going to be covered. All I got to do is say, yeah, I just hired him today. I don't have to carry a roster. And basically, our workers' comp is reported through audits. Our workers' comp company comes in, they look at our payroll just like, the leasing agency would. But the difference is that, we're not tied to that roster thing. And when you're tied to that roster thing, what the roofing companies typically do is they put one or two guys on the roster, and it makes the appearance as if you have workers' comp. But really, there's only one or two guys covered. And then when some guy falls and gets hurt on your roof, now you're liable for it because you didn't check to see if they have proper workers' comp. Now, a lot of stuff can happen there too with the general liability to see if you're liable or not. And we run into this too. We typically don't use subcontractors, but sometimes we get, large complexes, and, we'll usually stick a subcontractor out there. We check to make sure he has proper insurance. We put our supervisors out on the job to watch them so that we have in-house guys kind of making sure that it's Astro Roofing work being performed. But in saying that, even us as professional roofing contractors have been bitten by this insurance scam, because these guys will give you an insurance policy. You think it's their company. You're writing a check to this company that you think is them, and it's really not them. They're renting an insurance policy from some other guy that doesn't even have a roofing company. He just has insurance, and he rents it out to all these guys, and he takes a cut from their check. So he gets paid all the money, and then he writes them another check. And you don't realize this until there's been an issue or a problem. So the insurance is definitely, they definitely have to watch out for the insurance and cheap roofing contractors.
Yeah, I can see how that insurance loophole can be both helpful, but normally very bad, detrimental to the business. So I kind of want to stay more on that operational side too. So what's an operating cadence that you kind of, maybe a dashboard that you see weekly that you can just make sure you have visibility at all times within the operations?
Well, usually I go out, I visit the job sites. It's something that not a lot of owners do. They kind of rely on their supervisors for that, but again, I have a great team here, but I am the roofing expert, and that's what we built this company on, is my expertise. And every time I go out on a job, I save myself money. I save myself money, I save myself time, I save myself headaches. And it's not because my team is incompetent or incapable or any of that stuff. It's just that, I have a different eye for like just solving problems and preventing problems before they pop up because of my experience in the industry. So why would I not utilize that? So, I think, just operationally, being heavily involved, I could spend a lot of time on a boat. I don't have a boat, but I could spend a lot of time on a boat. I could spend a lot of time golfing. I love to golf. I actually do spend a lot of time coaching and training baseball. I got two kids playing on like several sports teams. For me, that's what I would rather spend my free time with my family and, doing stuff like that. But, you gotta put in the time and the effort in the field, and in the office and with your team. If you're not gonna do that, I don't know how you can expect to be tops. it's difficult enough to just exist in the roofing industry in South Florida, but to do it at a high level, you really got to dig in, man. I mean, you got to be here every day. You got to be in with your team. You got to be in the trenches, and I think that's what helps the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's great you have enough free time to do those kind of things that you love to do. Maybe what's giving you the most free time? Any tech or AI that's quietly removing friction for you?
I wouldn't say it's removing. It's actually since the advent of AI into our company, I think I've worked harder than ever. It's because it's opened up so many avenues for us to do so much other stuff, that we wanted to do in the past. But AI has made it more capable and easier for us to do that. Just like content generation, social media and internet marketing stuff, even as much as like writing our emails and like implementing process and understanding business better. AI has been incredible for that respect, but and I think it's helped us because in a lot of ways it's allowed us to be better at our jobs, which makes us want to work hard. I mean, when you're kind of lost in your position and you can't figure stuff out because you don't have the answers or the help or the tools necessary to complete the task at hand, you kind of feel incompetent, and then that kind of affects your production. So when you have these AI tools that we've integrated into our company, it just you know, it makes it so much easier for our team to be good at their job. And again, I think it's helped our productivity, not just because it's made our jobs easier, but like I said, it makes you, when you feel like you're making progress, you really want to dig in, right? I mean, that's when you really want to dig in, when you're kind of like gaining ground.
Yeah, for sure. AI has definitely opened so many doors and it allows for much more efficient operations, especially in contracting too. And a lot of it's so hands-on with everything. But there was one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, and that was the community initiative that you've got going on. You're like rerouting dollars into covering our community, right? So can you just kind of tell me a little bit more of that?
Yeah. So, you know, I've been really blessed with Astro Roofing. I mean, I don't come from money. I come from a family of roofers. I was lower middle class growing up. We didn't have a lot of money. And even when I started this job, I've always been successful. I've always made good money. I've always been good at making money. When I started Astro Roofing, obviously it changed my life. It changed my lifestyle. It changed my zip code. Changed a lot for me. But for the first 5 or 6 years in existence, maybe 7 years of existence, it was a real battle to become stable as a company. I'd say at least the first 5 years. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I really didn't take a paycheck. I kind of just paid bills and reinvested into the company. But around 2023, we kind of skyrocketed. We implemented some strategies for obtaining like more commercial work, things like that. Basically going out, knocking on doors, shaking hands, see people face to face, not relying on Google so much. And by doing that, we elevated our company. We basically doubled the company. We were at like 6.5 million, and we basically went to 12 million. When I did that, I mean, I thought I was kind of like at the finish line. I didn't realize there's really not a finish line. You're kind of always working on it. But the first year doing that, kind of, I splurged a little bit. I went out and spent a lot of money. I made a lot of money. So I was, buying nice cars, buying a bunch of jewelry, going on a lot of vacations, stuff like that. But it just, I just felt like I was doing something wrong, and it wasn't the money that I was spending. I just felt like I was missing out on opportunity. And, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing every year, coming into this year, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do that this year. I'm going to find a way to spend our marketing dollars in a way that's actually going to give back to the community in a way that will still benefit us, more in a good feeling type of way, rather than shoving money down Google's throat or Facebook's throat and hoping for the best. I'm like, you know what? I mean, let's try to generate some energy by, sponsoring local youth sports teams and putting banners up all over the place and shoving our money into the local community. And then this give back program. I mean, something I've kind of always done, but I've usually done it for friends of friends or people I've known or things like that, so this isn't something that's new, but I just feel like we're so blessed. I mean, we're so lucky to have relationships with our suppliers and our manufacturers. We get them involved in this program as well. But I feel like I mean, I just literally went and interviewed our first nominee. Our first uh, roof that we're going to put on for this program. And when I decided that they were the right candidate and that we were going to do the roof, I felt like I was so like I don't think I've ever felt more proud of anything, any idea or any strategy that I've come up with for my company than this. I hope it really inspires other people to kind of do the same thing. And basically, what it is we're letting people um, that we're letting people nominate others that they feel are in need. They can be anybody. It doesn't have to be anyone special, but we would prefer it to be a veteran or a school teacher or firefighter or something like that. But really, it's just anybody in our community that can't afford a new roof, but maybe does a lot of cool stuff for other people, is doing something, that warrants them deserving this help. So again, I don't want to play judge and jury over somebody, but when we sit down to find these people and when we sit down to decide who's actually going to receive this benefit, we want to pick the right people. But it's just so fulfilling, and I can tell you, I like I said, I've always kind of donated to charities and stuff like that, but for something that like you're an idea that you came up with, something you're spearheading, and to see it make a real impact on somebody's life, you can't buy that feeling. It's like it's worth $1,000,000. It's worth every penny of everything, so. And I really feel like that's the way the world works. You put good stuff in the world and good stuff will come back to you, so. That's that's the preface behind that, covering the community. If we're lucky enough to get notoriety out of this program, that's awesome. But really, we have notoriety. We have ways of generating revenue and things. We get a lot of word of mouth stuff like that. So um, it's not for that. If there's a side effect because of that, then I love it. And who wouldn't want to be known for that? Doing like cool stuff like that, right? That's what you want to be known for, right? So if I get notoriety for something like that, it's even better. But it's not. And yeah, we're putting marketing dollars towards it, but I don't care if I get one job out of it, to be honest with you, because we're going to do our work regardless. We're going to find ways to generate that revenue, get that work regardless. And there's always going to be money left over. And I just feel like rather than go buy another, big expensive material item or something, as long as the company's not suffering or anything like that, as long as we have cash flow and there's money in the bank and there's room for this program, we're gonna continue to lay it out.
Yeah, that's really incredible, man. I love that for you and your business. It shows a lot of character both for you and the company. So that's incredible. I do want to ask you one last question though. I'm more out of curiosity. You've seen such rapid growth in the last couple of years, and now you're able to give back to the community, which is amazing. So where would you want to see your business in maybe 1 year, maybe at the end of 2026? What would make that a win for you?
Well, again, we're always pushing for growth. Early in my career, well, I wouldn't say early in my career, but early in my career of trying to get into the sales and management, the business side of the industry, because I grew up like on the installation side, the installing the products. And I've had short stints of management throughout my career, but um, like I was lucky enough to be hired by one of the largest roofing companies probably in the world, but definitely largest roofing company in America. And they flew me around and kind of trained me how to be a general manager for a couple of years. And once I had that training of the business side of it, one of the first things that they taught me in that training was you have to focus on growth. Even if it's $1, we have to grow every year. It's okay to have periods of recession, obviously, like America basically. We recess and then we grow. But the focus has to be on growth. So we're always implementing strategies for growth, and we've implemented some new strategies this year that kind of like kind of like put injecting steroids into the strategy that got us, the doubling of our company back in 2023. We're kind of like doubling down on that strategy and really going after that, because I feel like that's going to be our future. We've recently obtained our general contractor's license again to obtain more growth. So I don't know if we're going to solicit construction work, but we run into a lot of it while we're doing these big complexes and stuff like that. So look, our goal is to be within 5 years at 25 million, and then within 10 years to 50 million. Hopefully we can exceed that, but that's our goal right now. It looks like next year, next year we're projected to, I would say, land between 12 and 15. I would like to land closer to 15 than 12, because this year has kind of been like a little recession for us. So we had a big year in 23, had a pretty good year in 24. 25 was kind of tough for us, so we started out slow, but we just signed like a bunch of work. So going at last half of 24 or last half of 25 and 26 is looking really strong for us. But without implementing constant strategy and throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, you're never gonna figure out the puzzle, because there's no magic key. There's just so many ways to do it. And again, that's why it's hard, because it's so dynamic. It's like it's ever changing. There's really no strategy that's going to continue to work forever, other than going out, knocking on doors and shaking people's hands, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you got, 5, 10-year visions. And like you're saying, there's not really a finish line. You always got to focus on growth. But awesome, Jason. We'll end it off there. This was excellent. So before we close out, though, is there anywhere people should connect with you? Maybe website, LinkedIn?
Yeah, we're everywhere. All you got to do is look for Astro with 2 A's. You can Google that, look it on YouTube. We have a ton of videos on there, educational, funny commercials, stuff like that. We do a lot of content, I guess you could say. But, yeah, we're everywhere. So, and I think we're the only AA Astro Roofing in the country. So, we're easy to find.
Awesome. Well, I'll link it below. But to the audience, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share with another builder or founder in your circle. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Intelligent Builder.